What is happening, everybody? Welcome to the Fins Up Network. It's Ben Morgan, and today we're kicking off our first 2023 Miami Dolphins offseason positional preview videos. And we're going to be kicking things off with the position of wide receiver, where we're kind of set because we're really damn top heavy, but we've definitely got a couple of issues after wide receiver one, after wide receiver two. So obviously, we're going to get to that, but I'm going to be knocking out each and every positional group over the next 2 weeks. I got a busy time coming up here, but I am going to be pumping these out. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you're getting subscribed. Turn on those notifications. Don't miss a single video. Like I said, going to be pumping out every single position over the next 2 weeks here. But your homework assignment, in case you're new, every once in a while, I like to give my listeners a homework assignment. So your assignment for today's video is drop your top free agent or NFL draft wide receiver that you'd like to see the Miami Dolphins realistically target this offseason. Drop that in the comments. Go ahead and give this a thumbs up as well if you are into doing something like that. But let's kick things off and talk about those 2022 Miami Dolphins wide receivers. Because, like I said, we're top heavy. Look at Tyreek and Jaylen Waddle. I had high expectations for this duo. They exceeded it immensely. Over 3,000 receiving yards. Look at the receptions, 119. And then Waddle's still creeping in there with 75. These numbers are crazy. And keep in mind, quarterback one, who the offense rolled with, missed what, a handful of games? These numbers are staggering. But like I said, that's not the issue. The issue is when we start looking at that wide receiver three position, because we brought in Cedric Wilson technically before Tyreek Hill. And what did Cedric Wilson do? Well, as you can see on the screen there, not too much. He was actually more noticeable this season as like the end of the season punt return guy. And even at that, that left a lot to be desired as well. So Trent Sherfield essentially became this team's wide receiver three. You could even make an argument that River Craycraft was kind of that wide receiver four, wide receiver three when needed, but neither of them put up just like crazy stats. And they didn't need to, because when you have Hill, when you have Waddle, wide receiver three is not the top of your priority. But God forbid, if something were to happen to one of those guys, you need a guy that's in-house that can step up and end up putting something together here. So that's what we're looking at. Because if you look at those unrestricted free agents, you got Sherfield there. You got Craycraft there. And as we're going to get, I'm going to show you a list of the free agent wide receivers heading into 2023. It's kind of a down year. There's not a bunch of big names. And granted, that's not a bad year for that to happen because we're likely not looking at a big name the way it is. But at the end of the day, we're going to need someone that can jump into this situation. So whether that's re-signing Sherfield or whether that's re-signing Craycraft, and I'm not opposed to that either, to be quite honest with you. Sherfield knows the system. He knows Tua. He knows Mike McDaniel. So there's good chemistry out there already. There's a good connection there already. I'm actually going to pop that back up on the screen here because I want to talk about those final guys as well. But if you look at other in-house candidates for that wide receiver three, wide receiver four position, you're looking at Eric Azukama and Braylon Sanders. Both of those guys, you could make an argument that they were like off-season, training camp, preseason MVPs at the position. At the wide receiver position, they were taking turns every single day, essentially taking the game ball from that practice or for that preseason game. Well, what happened when you got on the field? What they combined for? There were 3 catches for 20 yards. Sanders had a fumble in that game against the Lions. Azukama was active for what, one game? So if you're looking at one of those guys to step up and become this wide receiver three, I don't necessarily think the team is really comfortable with that. So I think they try to bring back a guy like Trent Sherfield, or they try to get into one of these wide receiver free agents that we're going to talk about here in a second. But that's a look at the 2022 wide receiver. And I talked about those free agent guys. Let's transition over to that real quick. So I wanted to tell you right away. So these are in order by receiving yards that these wide receivers got in 2022. So obviously there's more free agent wide receivers than this heading into this offseason. But this is just a quick glance as to what is that, 32? The top 32 in regards to yards that were accumulated last year. And like I said, I don't think we're going to be trying to get a top tier guy. We already have Tyreek Hill, one of the league's highest paid players. So you're not going to want to put a ton more of money into this position. And then you got Jaylen Waddle. So you're talking about a guy that obviously your wide receiver 3 for this team is going to see the field a lot, but it's not like you're going to be giving him these high dollars. So I'd be surprised if they landed a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster, like Jacoby Myers. But if you look into this free agent list, the sexy names aren't there, but what is there is veteran players that maybe can fill into a role. And if you look at last offseason, Marvin Jones, yeah, he's up there. You can see he's 32 years old. He was rumored to be hot with Miami. He absolutely wanted to come here. And I'm not saying that matters or anything, but keep your eye on a name like that. Another name that you could potentially look at here is Nelson Aguilar. He's been pretty good when he's been able to catch the ball. That's been the big if with him. It's when he's been able to actually catch the ball and hold on to the ball. That's been kind of one of the knacks on him over the last couple of years. But he's good after the catch. He's been a consistent deep threat, downfield kind of guy that could potentially thrive in this offense. And then if you look into that last column, there's 2 names that stand out more than the others. I'm going to do one thing real here quick. I'm going to pop that back up on the screen here. Mecole Hardman. So obviously a former teammate of Tyreek Hill. If Tyreek has any hopes maybe that Mecole Hardman has got something in the tank here, because right now there's been a lot of hype with Hardman coming out of the draft a few years back and then very little production. He's been hindered by injuries, hindered by lack of opportunities, what have you, with his time in Kansas City. If Tyreek Hill were to put in a good word with the Dolphins coaching staff, general manager, would the front office people listen to him? I don't know. But maybe keep an eye on a guy like Hardman. I'm not over the world with Hardman by any means, but there's a connection there, so I wanted to point it out. And then the name right below it, Jarvis Landry. Not that I'm making a case for him by any means, because look at his age. He's on the wrong side of 30. He's been banged up. He's been injured the last few years. His production has dropped off pretty significantly after those first, year or two with the Browns there. But he's a guy, obviously, that would be welcome back. Maybe he gives a little bit of a discount. Maybe he tries to get into this offense and makes a push for that title, because no one wants to win a football game more than Jarvis Landry. That dude has got the dog in him. You all know that. But it's an interesting free agent class. It's like I said, it's not going to set the world on fire by any means. But like I said, drop a comment. If one of these guys sticks out to you, drop a comment. Let me know who and maybe why he does. But I want to kick over to the NFL draft options as well. So now, just like I talked to you about sorting my free agents, these NFL draft wide receivers are sorted by kind of like a consensus. It's by the NFL mock draft database. So it's everyone that submits their mock drafts to the NFL mock draft database, and then they kind of get ranked positionally by there. And you'll see some guys that have the numbers before their names. So if you look at Quentin Johnson, he's got the 1 by his name. So him and everyone below him till you get to the 2 are those that they have projected going in the first round, obviously second all the way through 7th. But if you look at our picks at the top of the screen there, we've got a 2nd, 2/3, a 6th, and a 7th. So obviously after getting a pick taken away for the tampering charges, after trading picks to get Tyreek Hill, after trading a pick to get Bradley Chubb, we don't have a lot of draft capital left. So not saying that the Dolphins won't take a wide receiver in round 2nd or the 2nd or 3rd round. I would be surprised if they did, but I was also surprised that they took Eric Ezukanma in the 4th round last year. So I'll never say never, but if you're looking at this list of guys, I think you're likely, if Miami were to kick the tires per se in a late round guy, you're likely looking at that 6th or 7th rounder. And I don't have a ton of specifics on these guys right now, obviously in the 6th or 7th round. I'm into my draft prep, but I'm not in rounds 6 or 7 deep into my draft prep. So I will probably go into more specifics on a couple of these options with some NFL draft profiles, kind of like what I did last year for a lot of the NFL draft prospects as well. But this at least gives you a look. Like I said, I don't anticipate us landing any of those guys in that 1st, 2nd, 3rd round. But like I said, at the end of the day, never say never. They surprised me last year when they took Ezukanma in the 4th round. But if you're looking at a guy to maybe do a little bit of research on, look at those guys probably in rounds 6 and 7, since that's when our late round draft picks are. But that's what I've got. Like I said, the biggest thing this offseason in regards to the wide receiver position is looking at that wide receiver 3 and beyond. Now, whether that's keeping a guy like Trent Sherfield, a guy like Braylon Sanders, maybe a guy like Eric Azukama, maybe one of those guys emerges, or if it's a potential free agent, in my opinion, that's going to be the story of the offseason when it comes to the Miami Dolphins wide receivers heading into 2023. But like I said, let's hear who you've got an eye on. Drop those NFL draft for those free agents. Maybe it's a trade guy. Maybe you got your eye on a trade market guy. Drop those in the comments. Want to hear from you. And like I said, if you haven't been subscribed yet, make sure you are getting subscribed. Going to be doing the same kind of form of a video, but for every single position. I believe I've got cornerbacks scheduled to come out next. But that's what I've got for wide receivers, Miami Dolphins fans. And until next time, Fins